The life of George Washington. George Washington was born on February 22nd, 1732. There wasn't a lot of information on the Washington family until George's father, Augustine Washington. George's father had land and slaves, built mills, and grew tobacco. George was the oldest out of his 6 siblings. When he was 6 years old, he cut down his dad's cherry tree with a hatchet. Later, he confessed because he could not tell a lie. To the age 7 to 11, he was homeschooled and studied with the local church officer. Then later studied with a schoolmaster in math, geography, Latin, and English. Augustine Washington, George's father, died when George was only 11 years old. George became his half-brother, Lawrence's, guardian after their father died. By George's early teens, he had mastered growing tobacco, stock raising, and surveying. In 1748, he traveled with a surveying party plotting land in Virginia's Western Territory. For 2 years, he was busy plotting land in Culpeper, Frederick, and Augusta County. In July 1752, Lawrence died of tuberculosis, making George the owner of the Washington land. Lawrence's only child, Sarah, died 2 months later. Washington later became the head of one of Virginia's most prominent estates, Mount Vernon, at age 20. Washington showed early signs of natural leadership. A little after Lawrence's death, Virginia's Lieutenant Governor, Robert Dinwiddie, appointed George with a rank of major in Virginia's military. October 31st, 1753, Dinwiddie sent Washington to Waterford, Pennsylvania, to warn the French to remove themselves from land claimed by Britain. The French and Indian War had begun, and the French counterattacked and drove Washington and his men back to his post at Great Meadows. After a full day, Washington surrendered and was soon released and returned to Williamsburg.
Washington was given the honorary rank of colonel and joined the British General Edward Braddock's army in Virginia. In 1755, Washington escaped injury with 4 bullet holes in his cloak and his horse shot from under him. In 1759 was the outbreak of the American Revolution. George had served in the Virginia House of Burgesses. George felt he was exploited by British merchants and hampered by British regulations. As the quarrel with the mother country grew acute, he firmly voiced his resistance to the restrictions. When the Continental Congress assembled in Philadelphia in 1775, Washington, one of Virginia's delegates, was elected commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. July 3, 1775, in Massachusetts, George took command of his ill-trained troops and embarked upon a war that was to last 6 years. In 1781, the French, aided with the U.S., forced Cornwallis to surrender at Yorktown. In 1789, George helped lead the Constitutional Convention. When the new Constitution ratified, the Electoral College elected George for president. When the French Revolution led to a major war between France and England, Washington refused to accept entirely the recommendations of either Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. He insisted that the nation should be neutral until the nation grew stronger. Washington was involved in Hamilton's financial plan to get the country out of debt. George also created Jay's Treaty to stop the tension between the U.S. and Britain. Not only did he create Jay's Treaty, but also Pinckney's Treaty. It resolved territorial disputes between the U.S. and Spain. He created the structure of the federal court, also known as the Judiciary Act. When George created the tax of alcohol, Pennsylvania farmers were angered by taxes on whiskey and decided to protest. Sadly, George Washington died on December 14, 1799.
The Life of George Washington.